Okay, good morning, or actually here in Australia, it is afternoon. So welcome to class 15 using Brother Tio's notes. Now, in our last class, we looked at petas, we discussed petas and the practice of transferring merit to them. All right, now we're going to move on to the third verse of the Ratana Sutta. And it begins our attention to the three great treasures, the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. And it will ask us to see why they're called Ratana, rare and beautiful jewels beyond comparison. Now, when we collect all these qualities of the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha sincerely, when we recollect them, our hearts become steadier. I mean, we really become more stable, less shaken by the world, and more inclined to practice well. So it inspires our practice. Um, so these jewels are available to us, they're accessible to us. And when we finish this particular sutta, the Ratana Sutta, we're then going to move on to the salutation to the triple gem, the Itipiso Bhagava Araha Sama Sambuddha, the listing out of the 9 qualities of the Buddha, the 6 qualities of the Dhamma, the 9 qualities of the Sangha. We're going to go through those in some detail. But at this point, what I want to do is contrast the Ratana Sutta treatment of the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha jewels and the salutation to the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, because they are actually introduced differently for different purposes. When we do the um, salutation to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, that has more of a internal focus. And let me explain where that recitation comes from, the qualities of the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. There is a sutta in which Mahanama Sakyan came to the Buddha and said, how can I feel more safe and secure when I'm going to a dangerous place? So this is a lay person saying, how can I calm myself? And the Buddha said that you can recollect these qualities of the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. So when we're saying Iti Piso Bhagava Araha Sama Sambuddha and so on, when we recite that, this is more a focus on calming our mind, building up it's an internal focus of building up the faith, the confidence, tranquility, concentration. And in the commentary, it takes these 3 salutations of the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha and turns them into reflections, anusati. So there's Buddha anusati, Dhamma anusati, Sangha anusati, which means this is primarily used by monks to develop concentration in a samatha practice all the way up to the access concentration, upachara samadhi. So they reflect on these qualities of the Buddha, the qualities of the Dhamma, the qualities of the Sangha. That's the purpose of those that section of the salutation. It's from the suttas, and for lay people, it's feeling safe and tranquil and having confidence. Whereas for monks, it's often used as a meditation. On the other hand, in the Ratana Sutta, we take the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha. We'll mention some qualities of each of them. The sutta mentions some qualities of each of them, but the focus is more external, to provide protection from external, provide blessing.
Excuse me, Brother Rob.
Yeah.
There is no slides.
Yes, I know. I haven't moved to the first slide yet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. There, I've moved to the first slide. Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I'm just kind of giving some background information first on that very first one. So yeah, the Ratana Sutta, it really is more externally focused, stating these proclamations. By this truth, may there be safety. So there's this truth act. It's a parita, protective chanting, and it's more directed outwards to devas or spirits or general well-being, rather than the salutation, which is more internally focused. Now, moving to the verse 3, which is in the past two verses, this was more of an introduction. Now we're going to actually look at the first verse where it names the Tathagata, or the Buddha, um, and it declares that there's no treasure, either worldly or divine, that equals the Buddha. Now, this is a call to re-examine what we usually value. We tend to measure worth or treasure by possessions, appearance, or social approval. But in the Ratana Sutta, it turns this measure upside down. It points to liberation from suffering as the true measure of value. That's what's really valuable. So even a single quality of the Buddha's enlightenment is more precious than the rarest tangible jewel. So you might want to think, okay, so what do I treasure the most? And can I train the mind to cherish liberation more deeply than anything else? So in this first verse, it says, whatever treasure exists here or beyond, or the sublime gem in the heavens, there is none equal to the Tathagata. This too is the sublime gem in the Buddha. And then the most important part of this verse is, by this truth, may there be safety. So it's addressing the sutta is being addressed to the devas, saying, by the truth of this statement, this truth declaration, may there be safety. So it's kind of like radiating a desire for safety. Now we'll go through some of the more important things in this verse. This third verse moves really into the essence of the sutta, which is basically establishing a basis for warding off danger, bestowing safety and blessings by forming determinations of truth based on the triple gem. So really at this point, it moves from praise to practice. Here we're not praising the Buddha, we are talking about practice. And through this Saccakiriya, the declaration of truth, it's not superstition. It's not an attempt to bend nature by ritual. You're not trying to change nature or karma by ritual. It's a wholesome power of aligning speech with truth. And then when one speaks truth with a pure heart, the mind is steadied and uplifted. Confidence grows, doubt quietened, and the intention is purified. That's why it also supports meditation. The act is simple, yet it directs the flow of the mind toward wholesome chittas, giving clarity to whatever practice we undertake. Now, the next, looking at this verse, it's difficult to understand from looking at the English, but when it was actually spoken in Pali, there is a lot of word plays. So in the phrase, whatever treasure exists here or beyond, or the sublime gem in heavens, there is the word, something is a treasure, or vitam, because it produces gladness, which is vitim. There's prosperity, soga, in heaven, suaga, and a gem, ratana, brings delight, ratim. So, these are not just the Buddha trying to be clever. They're memory aids. They're helping you recall, especially if you're familiar with the Pali. So you recite them slowly, and you get the rhythm to touch your heart. And the sound, the meaning together, they bring up like a wholesome delight, and that strengthens piti. And when you think about what's in this verse, the Tathagata, the joy that it brings up, that really inclines the mind in a very wholesome way. Now, according to the commentary, the jewels in the heavens are massive, more beautiful, and more common than on earth. Actually, the commentary goes through many, many pages describing all these fantastic jewels that exist in the heavens. And then it says, but none of these compare to the Buddha. Actually, one of the jewels that it talks about is the wish fulfilling gem. This wish fulfilling gem is a jewel that whoever possesses it, whatever they want, it will happen. But even that pales in comparison to the Tathagata, the Buddha. So there is none equal to the Tathagata. Tata means thus, in such a manner, or truly, or rightly. And the way in which the verb, or the word rather, Tathagata is built up is from Tatata, which means thus, and then Agata, which means come or arrived. In other words, thus come, or Gata, gone. And it's not clear from the sutta or in the commentaries which was originally meant, but I think we could say both of them are valid descriptions. So what they show is that the Buddha is both coming and gone. In the Tata Agata, the coming, he has come by fulfilling the 10 paramis to teach the Dhamma. Like all the past Buddhas, when the Tathagata has completed the 10 paramis, the 10 perfections, and that's how he became a Buddha. Therefore, he is called thus come. He's also called Tathagata, which means thus gone, because he has gone to Nibbana by perfecting the 37 aids to enlightenment, the Bodhipakadhammas. So those two meanings are the way in which the Buddha is recognized through the 10 come through the 10 paramis. That's how he became a Buddha. And he has gone to Nibbana by perfecting the 37 aids of enlightenment. But you shouldn't think of Nibbana as like a place that one goes to. It is a state, an object of consciousness. It is not like a heaven or a place. It is simply a state of mind that the Buddha has attained, and all the saints have also experienced. So like a jewel, the Buddhahood, not just the Buddha, but the whole concept of Buddhahood is rare. It's rare for a Buddha to arise. It is precious. It gives delight. Anybody who looks at a jewel, even if they don't own it, they are delighted by it. Similarly, Buddhahood, even though one is not enlightened, when one sees the Buddha, and I mean sees not necessarily visually, but also mentally visualizes the Buddha, that brings delight. Personally, I find that when I look at a Buddha Rupa, the expression, the serene expression on the statue, always makes me feel happy. And wish fulfilling, the wish that Buddhahood fulfills is not anything tangible like I want to be rich or I want to be famous. This is wish for enlightenment. Okay. Then the final verse, or the final actually sentence here is, by this truth may there be safety, etena sachena suvati hotu. And each of the following verses is going to end with this statement, by this truth may there be safety. This is central to the sutta. It means, the power here is not magical, but the strength of the truth itself. when we direct our minds to truth, aligned with wholesome volition, the result is calming and protective. So reciting this phrase is most effective. It's best when you do it mindfully. You don't just chant it mechanically, but you place your attention on the meaning. Like, by this truth, really, may there be safety. In this way, it's becoming an active meditation, not a concentration meditation, but it steadies the heart, radiates peace. And looking at it more carefully, the words etena means by this, sachena, truth. Suvati has multiple meanings. I'm using Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. He translated it as safety, but other people have translated Suvati as welfare, well-being, auspiciousness, and hotu is the verb to be. And in Pali, they often put the verb at the end of the sentence, short sentences at least. You'll find the verb at the end of the sentence. So, by this truth, may there be safety, etena sachena suvati hotu. So it reminds us this truth itself, it carries the force of protection. And so we're not appealing to outside forces, but placing confidence in the reliability of the triple gem. And by turning our mind toward this truth, we create a cause for peace and stability in ourself and externally radiated. So the safety is not just looking at ourselves, it is saying, may there be safety externally. And if we remember the context in which this sutta was given, there were all these problems with the Vesali. They were having famine, they were having a lot of disease and death, and they were inhabited by a lot of non-human spirits, animals, or ghosts. And so it was to have safety from these external things that this sutta was given as a protection, a parita. So this refrain, etena sachena suvati hotu, is called in Pali a sacha-kirya, an act of truth that dedicates this truth for the welfare of beings, so externally focused. So this is from the commentary. So it's an act of truth depends on three things: alignment with ultimate truth, you got volition, wholesome volition, intention, and sincerity. You're doing it with your heart. So you can't just say, all right, I was born in October, and by this truth, may there be safety. Yes, it is true that I was born in October. That's my birthday month, but that's not the kind of ultimate truth that really gives power to a Satyakirya. All right. So the refrain, the efficacy, the power of this is the unassailable reality of the triple gem. It's a Paramata Satya, the wholesome volition of truth speaking and the dedication of that wholesome force to others. In other words, this is not a may I be well, may I be happy, may I be safe. No, it's may there be safety for others. So for one of these Satyakirya to be powerful, it really need, according to the commentary, it has to be dedicated to others, not to oneself. Because of one's own virtue and one's own practice, then the mind becomes firm and radiant, and the statement of this truth radiates outwards. And the result is safety, prosperity, and well-being, both inwardly through your own faith, your calmness and confidence, and outwardly. This gives protection from danger and communal harmony. So, these are not supernatural miracles, but natural consequence of a mind aligned with the truth. Truth, sincerity, wholesome volition come together. The citta is strengthened, and the influence extends outward. in beneficial ways. So when one recites the verse, one is directing one's mind first to the meaning of the words and then connecting one's mind to the qualities of the Buddha jewel. So we are, when we recite this verse, we connect with the qualities of the Buddha as a power to radiate outwards. Okay. So we can think of this as a two-stage process. You first draw your mind to the spiritual power of the Buddha, derived through the Buddha's attainment of the 10 paramis, the 37 aids of enlightenment, the Tathagata, and then we direct the mind to the meaning of the words, connecting to the quality. This creates a mind full of quality and trust, confidence, and devotion. And then we send it outwards. So when we say, may there be safety, you can think of it as like metta on steroids. That's not from the commentary, that's my description, but just think of it as an extremely powerful radiating of metta. So that's why it's created as a collection. This is why this sutta is considered to be a parita, a protection. It's like radiating metta. And as we know from the earlier discussion, the devas, when you radiate metta, you are dear to the devas. The devas really appreciate it. The devas are going to themselves try to influence to within their capability the world around you. And so it's the devas radiating metta to us and affecting small things. And we talked about earlier in a couple of classes ago, all the things that a deva can do in the tangible world. Okay. But initially the mind may not be so spiritually powerful, but as your practice deepens, the mind can become more spiritually powerful. And when a spiritually developed person, such as a monk, sincerely says, Etena Sachena Subhati Hotu, it can be a powerful blessing. I know that, for example, I often, not often these days because I'm in Australia, but when I can, I go and visit Chief Reverend at Sento Temple. And when he chants, I am so inspired. He does it slowly and mindfully. He trains all his monks to recite the blessing slowly and mindfully. And I personally feel the power of the chief reverend and the monks at Sentul, not recently, a little while ago, but the Ratana recited a whole CD worth of verses, like 3 CDs worth of chants in the very slow and methodical way that really inspired devotion. And when a powerful monk or a spiritually developed monk recites the sutta or recites an act of truth or such a kirya, it can feel very, very powerful. You feel that it's very protective. And this is why monks are often invited to recite the Ratana Sutta to provide blessings to a new building or a new venture. Whenever there is a new building being like a school or not just a monastery, but even for lay people building or a new business venture, or you're starting on a new career, get blessing from a monk using the Ratana Sutta, and it provides safety, security, welfare, auspiciousness to the new blessing. Okay. So that's the verse that talks about the Buddha. Before I move to the verse that starts to talk about the Dhamma, any questions on what I've been going through so far? Okay. No questions? Hello?
All good, Brother Rob.
Okay, good, 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 good. All right. I just want to make sure that I wasn't just talking at my computer, that there's somebody out there. Okay, so now we move on to the Dhamma. Um, now, now the sutta shifts to the second jewel, the Dhamma, and to recollect the Dhamma, not simply to remember doctrine or texts. It's not to just memorize texts. It's remembering the reality, the liberating reality that the Dhamma points to, Nibbana. And so when we remember the Dhamma in this way, we remember the goal of Nibbana and the path together, the Noble Eightfold Path. And the goal is liberation. The path is the Noble Eightfold Path. It's turning our mind to both. We find like inspiration for our practice. So in this verse, the Dhamma jewel is Nibbana. Nibbana is the ultimate Dhamma jewel. So when we take refuge in the Dhamma, the first thing that we're taking refuge as the Dhamma is not the Tipitaka, all the stack of books. It is the ultimate Nibbana, ultimate Dhamma, which is Nibbana. The second aspect of what we take refuge in, ultimate Dhamma, is the path to that ultimate Dhamma, the path to Nibbana, which is the Noble Eightfold Path. So in this verse, we're looking at the Dhamma jewel is Nibbana, and the next verse, the Dhamma jewel is the supramundane Noble Eightfold Path. Now, the Noble Eightfold Path, that's the effective Dhamma jewel leading to Nibbana. And I want to stress the word supramundane Noble Eightfold Path. It's not the normal Eightfold Path. It is the supramundane Noble Eightfold Path. And I will clarify those differences in a bit. So the words destruction, dispassion, the deathless, and sublime, those are descriptions of Nibbana. Destruction, it means the destruction, or kayam, is the destruction of greed, the destruction of hatred, the destruction of delusion, the destruction of craving is really what this is, what is meant by destruction, according to the commentary. Dispassion, viragam, is the fading away of passion. Now, viragam is made up of two Pali words, or prefix vi and raga. Raga is lust or passion. Vi is like opposite. So if you think of the opposite of passion, this is what is Nibbana. It is the cooling away of passion. Deathless, amatam, that's freedom from birth. No more birth, aging, death. So Nibbana is deathless. It's also sublime, anitam, which means excellent, supreme, inexhaustible goodness. So these are the commentarial description of the words destruction, dispassion, deathless, and sublime, meaning Nibbana. Sakyamuni, sometimes in the text, in the suttas, particularly in the later suttas, the later developed suttas, the Buddha is called Sakyamuni, which literally means the sage or wise person of the Sakyans. It's an honorific title for the Buddha, and it reminds us that the Buddha was a Sakyan. He was a human, just like us. And the difference between the Buddha and us is that the Buddha was so wise. He was born as a human, but through wisdom became enlightened. Sakya being the wisdom, Muni being the sage or wise person. Okay, so there is none equal to the Dhamma. Here is a sutta of all phenomena, conditioned or unconditioned. In other words, of whatever there is, or whatever phenomena there is, dispassion or nibbana is declared the foremost among them. That is the crushing of pride, the removal of thirst, the uprooting of attachment, the termination of the round. Here it means rounds of rebirth, the destruction of craving, dispassion, cessation, nibbana. So, the Anguttara Nikaya describes nibbana as viraga or dispassion. Now, this is easily misunderstood. It doesn't mean dullness or indifference. It means freedom from the fever, the heat of craving. And we can test this in practice. Every time desire fades and the mind is peaceful, that's dispassion. It's it's very far from dullness. It's a feeling of relief. And remembering the nibbana as viraga encourages us to like value these small moments because they point to a greater freedom, like a full awakening. So when there is this attachment to something coming up in daily life, or particularly in meditation, when there is a recognition that, the mind is now attached to this object, and then there is the letting go of that object, there's a feeling of coolness, there's a feeling of relief. And that feeling of coolness or relief is the dispassion that we're referring to here. Of course, that's just a small amount. If you amplify that, that is the experience of nibbana, the total giving up of craving for not just the tangible things, not just the sense experiences, but of total giving up of existence itself. At this stage, when one says, by this too is the sublime gem in the Dhamma, may there be safety, you're now tuning your mind to that special, precious spiritual power of the Dhamma. And you're making your mind like a channel for that spiritual power, drawing on that spiritual power through one's mind and directing all this power to the wish that there be safety or welfare or well-being, auspiciousness. This is what this verse is about. The next verse, where we're talking about the Dhamma as the path, it is the purity that the Supreme Buddha praised, which they call concentration without interval. The equal of that concentration does not exist. This too is a sublime gem in the Dhamma. By this truth, may there be safety. So here we're talking about the Dhamma jewel being the supramundane Noble Eightfold Path. And when they call concentration, they mean right concentration, sama samadhi, and it represents the entire supramundane Noble Eightfold Path. So we go through the Noble Eightfold Path, starting with right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and the peak is right concentration. So what is the difference between the ordinary or mundane Eightfold Path and the supramundane one? We use right mindfulness factor we start by developing the mundane or ordinary Eightfold Path. And so when we are in daily life or in Vipassana practice, we are developing the right path factors at a mundane level. And in particular, right mindfulness factor of that is used to develop Vipassana. That vipassana leads to supramundane right concentration with the experience of nibbana. So supramundane right concentration at the peak of the ordinary rightful path through vipassana is what experiences nibbana. This is the path or magga citta, and the fruit or phala citta. They are jhana cittas, supramundane right concentration. So in the suttas, when it talks about right concentration, it describes them as jhana chittas. It describes them as attaining jhanas. And so if you just read the suttas superficially, you may have the idea that, oh, this is, you need to practice jhana to attain enlightenment. And technically, this is true. But the suttas also, and the commentary talk about dry arahats who attain nibbana without going through jhana. They're called dry arahats because they don't have the lubrication of the normal jhanas. There were jhanas before the Buddha. Many spiritual teachers developed jhana. The Buddha developed jhana before he became the Buddha, but that's not what led to enlightenment. It was a platform that led to enlightenment. So supramundane right concentration is concentration without interval, because the effect, the uprooting of the fetters, happens immediately. This is what makes this right concentration different from the normal mundane jhanas. The effect of those other concentrations, such as jhanas, is transient. So if I attain a jhana, yes, while in that jhana, there are no defilements able to arise in the mind, because the mind is so totally absorbed in the object, in the nimitta, in the object of jhana. However, when I exit the jhana, my mind is just, there's no long-term effect. The effect is over. The mind is still now subject to the same kinds of defilements. On the other hand, supramundane right concentration, that's permanent. The supramundane right concentration uproots the defilements so that it's not possible for them to arise again. Okay, so a worldling, every citta is influenced by accumulations, your habits, your accumulations, your tendencies. Every single arising of mental state is influenced by them. Then there are path citta and a fruit citta. This is the progression to sotapanna. The path and fruit citta, if you look at them on the chart of cittas, you will see that they are grouped together with the jhana cittas. This is because they have the level of concentration of jhana. They have the level of absorption as the other jhanas, the mundane jhanas. However, they're not like mundane jhanas in that these are transformative, totally transformative cittas that one first experiences as a path to attain sotapanna, and then the fruit of that path, the phala, the fruit of sotapanna. And then after that, every citta is influenced by accumulations and the experience of nibbana. So for a sotapanna, yes, all those same accumulations also still exist. However, there is an even more powerful, you will say, event. This path and fruit citta are so powerful, the path citta, rather, to be specific, is so powerful that it will block certain defilements from arising in the mind of a sotapanna. So this is how a sotapanna, even though through multiple existences can no longer have a wrong view about self, wrong, attachment to rites and rituals, or the any doubt in the Buddha Sangha. Once a Sotapanna, or once a being has experienced firsthand Nibbana for the very first time, it's not possible for that being to have a wrong view of self after that, because the experience of Nibbana was so powerful that over many lifetimes, no more possibility of the experience of wrong view can arise. No more possibility of attachment to rites and rituals. One knows through direct experience how to attain the path, the fruit and path, the path and fruit chitta. One knows how to attain enlightenment, and so therefore one is not going to be attached to rites and rituals anymore, because one knows that, oh, the path to path and fruit, the path to enlightenment is vipassana. That is not to say that they do not, a Sotapanna will not participate in things like chanting or bowing in front of the Buddha, but they recognize that those things are just used to soften the mind, if you will, as part of one's spiritual development. They are not the thing that leads directly to enlightenment. It is the vipassana that leads directly to enlightenment. So before I move on to the Sangha, any questions on what I've just covered? Okay, when we talk about the Sangha, we're going to be coming back to the Sotapanna and the uprooting of defilements again. So we'll come back to that picture. So the next verse, the 8 persons praised by the good constitute 4 pairs. Those worthy of offerings are the fortunate ones' disciples. Gifts given to them yield abundant fruit. This too is the sublime gem in the Sangha. By this truth, may there be safety. So this verse refers to the Sangha jewel. So we're now switching. It's not just a community of monks and nuns, but rather the Aryan Sangha, those who have already realized the path and fruit. If you're going to take refuge in something, it must be something that gives perfect protection. When we take refuge in the Buddha, we're not taking refuge in that statue, that marble statue. No, we're not taking refuge in a person that has already gone. We're taking refuge in the Buddhahood, that ideal of the Buddhahood. That is what is the perfect refuge. When we're taking refuge in the Dhamma, we're not taking refuge in the stack of books that make up the Tipitaka. We are taking refuge in the Nibbana and the Noble Eightfold Path. Those are the Dhammas that provide true and perfect refuge. When we're talking about the Sangha jewel, we're not taking refuge in the monastic Sangha, just those that wear the robe. We're talking about those who have already attained enlightenment, the Aryan Sangha. So the Sangha jewel is not the monastic Sangha. It is the Aryan Sangha of saints, the community of noble ones. And the monastic Sangha just represents the Aryan Sangha. I mean, I can tell you from my own personal experience that when I became a Samanera and put on the robe, people were showing respect to me, and my initial thought was, hey, I'm the same guy I was just yesterday. Why so much respect for me? It's not respect for me personally. It's respect for the robe. Similarly, when we hear about members of the monastic sangha behaving in inappropriate ways, that does not mean that we see the sangha as representing rather the Aryan sangha. And yes, there are some monks who are bad apples, but that does not mean that the Aryan sangha is not the perfect refuge. The Aryan Sangha has got 4 stages: Sotapanna, or stream enterer; Sakadagami, the once returner; the Anagami, or non-returner; and the Arahat, or perfected one. And why they talk about 8 persons? They talk about those who have actually experienced the path and those who are abiding in the path. So the commentaries describe these 4 pairs of individuals. So each stage has a magga, the moment of path, and according to the Abhidhamma, this is just, or according to the Theravada, this is just one mind moment, and phala, which is the fruit that follows. And so a sotapanna can go, and after having achieved the magga, they'll never achieve magga again, but they can go and experience the bliss of nibbana as a sotapanna, and that is using the sotapanna phala citta, where they can go and just experience nibbana again and again as a sotapanna. So that's why together it makes 8. Why are they highlighting this? It reminds us there's both breakthrough and abiding. So there's both the decisive moment of change and then the steady living out of that change. So we see that progress is both sudden and gradual, both momentary and enduring. So there is the one event, and then there's the ongoing effect of that one event. The sotapanna, as I mentioned, uproots. And when I say uproots, it's because of and I mentioned this before, there is no way that the chittas can be influenced through Pakatupisinaya, natural decisive support condition. No way that the chittas can be influenced by unwholesome chittas that are associated with self-view, doubt, or attachment to rites and rituals. The Sakadagami, they don't uproot anymore, but significantly reduce lobha, dosa, moha, attachment, aversion, and delusion. The Anagami uproots ill will, any kind of aversion they uproot, and sense craving. This is attachment to sense objects. And because an Anagami has uprooted attachment to sense objects, when they die, they will no longer be reborn in a sensual plane, in a plane with sense objects, because they're not interested. That means that they're going to be reborn up in a Brahma realm where there's actually a group of realms that is designated just for Anagamis, where they have 5 realms up there for experiencing for jhana for long time. The Arahat, they uproot desire for existence in the form realm, desire for existence in the formless realm, conceit, restlessness, and ignorance. I made a graph here, a chart rather. And so we can see the different unwholesome chittasikas: delusion or moha, shamelessness, aharika, fearlessness of wrongdoing, anuttapa, restlessness, udacha. And I broke lobha into 2: attachment to sense objects, that is uprooted only by the anagami, and attachment related to existence, that's either related to form or formless existence, that is by the arahat, uprooted by the arahat. Wrong view by the diti, uprooted by the sotapanna. Conceit, uprooted by the arahat. Aversion, as I mentioned, uprooted by the anagami. According to the commentary, envy or isa and stinginess or machacharya, they're very coarse type of defilements. They uprooted at the Sotapanna stage. Sloth and torpor or tinamida, they are uprooted only at the arahat stage. So even a anagami or less, they still sometimes get mentally tired and feel lazy sometimes. This tinamida. Now, this is doubt is vichikicha is not doubt about facts. It is doubt about the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, doubt about the practice. This is the kind of doubt we're talking about here. You can say, well, I'm not sure how to get from here to Ipoh, for example. That's not doubt. That's not vichikicha. That is simply not knowing. Um, and it's not necessarily a defilement. Just because you don't know how to get from there to Ipoh, from here to Ipoh, doesn't mean it's a defilement. But here, doubt in this context is very specifically focused on the Buddha, doubt in the Buddha, doubt in the Dhamma, doubt in the Sangha, and doubt in practice. So, any questions on this chart?
Yeah, Brother Rob, Brother
Yeah.
Chris here. Sakadami Takami has no blue dots there. Is there a reason?
I'm sorry. For some reason, I can't hear very well. What was that you said?
Okay, sorry. I'm outside. I'm getting a bit closer. Is this better?
Yeah, much
Is this
much
better?
better.
Okay, so if you look at the Sotapanna, there's four blue dots, but in Sakadagami there is no dots at all. So there's no
Correct.
difference between Saka and Sotapanna.
Okay. What this blue dots represent is at what stage are unwholesome chittasikas permanently uprooted. So for you and I, who are worldlings, all of these, the whole list can arise at any time when conditions support in our mind. Okay. Now, for a sotapanna who has experienced nibbana, okay, if they've experienced nibbana for the very first time, that one experience of nibbana has a huge impact on all future thoughts, all future mental states arising, so that no more can wrong view, diti, envy, isa, stinginess, machacharya, or doubt, vichikicha, arise in that person's mind, because the effect of the experience of nibbana, which is so powerful, it blocks any of them from arising. Now, and so therefore we refer to these as being uprooted, completely gone, can never arise again. Then at the Sakadagami stage, the second, there is nothing that is uprooted, but what will happen is the lobha, dosa, and moha, which still exist. The Sakadagami still has all of the same remaining unwholesome chittasikas in their mind. They still have delusion, shamelessness, fearlessness, restlessness, attachment to sense objects, or attachment, conceit, aversion, and sloth and torpor. It still exists. However, they're going to be far, far weaker, significantly reduced in power and effectiveness. So, and then it's not until the anagami stage happens, the third stage of sainthood, that new things are uprooted. In that case, the attachment to sense objects and the aversion are uprooted. And then finally, at an arahat stage, everything is uprooted. Everything else, all the other unwholesome, are uprooted. So the Sotapanna they can still get married, they can still have children, they can still be lay people. It's possible for a Sotapanna to live from the outside, a fairly ordinary looking life. you can't see their mind, but they could be a sotapanna, and you just don't know. Because from all external things, the way in which you can't see how they think, but inside their mind, there is no wrong view, envy, stinginess, or doubt. When the transition to Sakadagami happens, there is a marked change in their behavior, such that the loba, I mean, yes, theoretically, they could still live a layperson's life, but they would feel so they would you would notice them as being very separate, not attached to things, much more detached, much more dispassionate about things as compared to the Sotapanna. So it's just a deeper level of spiritual practice or spiritual development in their mind. Does that help? Does that explain that why the chart is built the way it
Yeah,
is?
yeah. Can I put it another way that the difference between Sakada Gami and Gami is not 100%, but Anagami is 100%. That's the reason why you dare not there's no blue or half blue dots in Sakada Gami in terms of attachment to sense object?
Yeah, you could say they're halfway there.
Okay, clear,
You could say, I
clear.
mean, that
Thanks.
might be a way of saying it, because the things that they're still working on is the attachment to sense objects in the aversion. I mean, a sotapanna can still get angry, though they may not scold, and I mean, they can still get frustrated and upset. Um, However, the emotions that happen in a sotapanna will never be enough, or higher, will never be enough to cause rebirth in a unwholesome state, like a hell or animal or peta or asura. They will not ever be reborn in one of those states. Sotapanna cannot be, or any of these saints cannot be reborn in those states. So their anger, their conceit, their attachment to things, um, their delusion, it's still there, but it's not powerful enough to cause an unwholesome rebirth.
Yeah, clear. Thanks, Brother Rob.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, but Rob, I got two questions. Always taking refuge, right, on the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Is there a difference in the strength between this Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha? If there's a difference in the strength, right? Let's say, for instance, if a person have a anxiety of death, yeah, so should he or she take refuge in the Buddha first? And if he cannot overcome that anxiety of fear, then later you go to take refuge in the Dhamma. And if that still cannot overcome, then finally you take, a refuge in the Sangha. If there's a difference in the strength, that's
Okay.
the two questions I have. First for the timing, Brother Rob.
Okay, so there is no, overall, there is no evidence of any difference in strength between the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha as a progression. It's not as you described, where you first do the Buddha, and if that's not enough, you go to the Dhamma, if that's not enough, you go to the Sangha. However, people have different proclivities, different tendencies. Some people may find easier to see refuge in the Buddha. Some people may feel refuge in the Dhamma. Some people may feel refuge in the Sangha as more naturally protective for them. So it really depends on the individual. One person may find refuge when they recite when in the next section, or rather after we finish the Ratana Sutta, we'll go through the salutation to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. We'll go through the 9 qualities of the Buddha, the 6 qualities of the Dhamma, the 9 qualities of the Sangha. Now, for some people, they may find themselves more drawn to and feel more aligned with or inspired by the Buddha qualities, the Dhamma qualities, or the Sangha qualities, depending on their own individual character. So one may be more powerful as a refuge for one person, another may be more powerful for another person, but it does not work in a progressive way where you first do the Buddha, then Dhamma, then Sangha. No, all three of them. Okay?
Okay, thank you, Brother Rob.
Did you have another question? Sorry, did you say you had two questions?
Brother Rob,
Yes.
in the Anagami, it
Yep.
says that he's such that his attachment to sense objects are eradicated. So when you say the sense object, does it relate to the six senses, objects of the six senses?
Yes. So therefore, you'll notice how I've broken it out down here. Attachment to sense objects being uprooted by the anagami, and the attachment related to existence is by the arahat. So the anagami still wants to continue existing. That's not uprooted until the arahat stage. However, sense objects here refer to all six senses. The sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and thought. The toughest to get rid of is attachment to thought. Conviction on beliefs. You got to, somebody has got their own ideas and they're attached to them, or they're attached to concepts like they're attached to concepts. Those are also under the uprooted by the anagami. So when all of this has been uprooted, what's left for them, the anagami, when they pass away, is they're non-returner. They're not going to return to this worldly, sensuous plane. They're going to be reborn in the Brahma realm, where they're going to be in jhana most of the time. And these beings actually just really don't give a damn about the world. Because they're way up there and they don't care, right? And in the suttas, it talks about the Buddha actually visited them and said he'd never been there before becoming a Buddha. All right, so for the first time, he used his psychic powers and went up there and visited the Anagami realms because in his previous existences, he had never been there in all of his previous rebirths, because the only way you get in there is by becoming an Anagami. And when the Buddha was reborn in this existence, in his current existence, he was a worldling. So he went all the way from worldling to arahat, or in his case, Buddhahood, in that one existence. Okay, so yes, attachment to sense objects is all six senses, and the toughest is attachment to the thought sense.
Brother Rob, one last question I have. This envy, right, and the stinginess, right? I thought that is only uprooted at the anagami level instead of the sotapanna.
No, according to the commentary, envy and stinginess are very coarse. They're under what I will call team dosa. The envy is, I do not like the situation where somebody is better than I am. Stinginess is, I do not want to share. These are very coarse, very crude forms of aversion. And so they are uprooted according to the commentary. It's not mentioned in the suttas anywhere, but according to the commentary, and you'll also see it in Bhikkhu Bodhi's book, that they are listed as being uprooted by the Sotapanna.
So these are basically very cost. So-called this envy and stinginess, not the very subtle stage. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because if you think about it, envy and stinginess are fairly coarse kind of emotions. Not like, not accepting the fact that somebody is better than you, or not accepting the fact that you need to share something. Those are fairly coarse kinds of emotions. Okay. All right. Any other
Hello,
questions?
Brother Rob. One more
Yep.
question. Good afternoon,
Yep.
Brother Rob. Does it mean that if you eliminate these 13 factors, you are on the way to liberation? Is it? Or they are
Okay.
still, or they are
Let's
still
go. Okay, let's go through this. When you are a worldling, we're going to be influenced by all these 13 factors. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay.
13.
Yeah, 13, right. As a worldling, we're going to be constantly influenced by all of these factors. However, if we practice vipassana and through our vipassana attain path, sotapanna path, which is immediately followed by sotapanna fruit, once we obtain sotapanna path, that experience of the sotapanna path blocks 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. So 9 can still exist, though weakened. Weakened, I mean, not to the point where it can cause rebirth, but there's not 1, 2, 3, 4 of them can no longer exist. So you've entered the stream. You have already entered the stream to final and full liberation. So parinibbana, you've already reached the first stage towards parinibbana. Then you continue to practice vipassana and attain sakadagami, which weakens a bunch more. Nothing more gets eliminated. Continue to practice and reach the anagami path and fruit, and then the attachment to sense objects and aversion are completely uprooted. One is still what's called a trainee sekka, according to in the suttas, but one is very, very close to complete enlightenment. And then through more practice, more vipassana, one finally attains arhatship, and the remaining 4, 5, 6, 7 get completely eradicated. You're still existing, like you still walk around, you still eat, you still talk. However, as an arahat, there are absolutely no unwholesome chittasikas arising in the mind. And when the body finally gives out, then there is parinibbana, which means that there is no rebirth and there is no more existence. The cycle stops. So depends on what you mean by liberation. If you're talking about the cycle finally stopping, it's only for the arahat. However, experiencing nibbana happens first at the sotapanna stage in the path, and then the sotapanna can then go and experience the bliss of nibbana, which is the fruit sotapanna phala chitta, again and again and again while they continue to practice. Did that answer your question?
Brother Rob, one more. Means
Yep.
that at the Arahant stage, you actually experience Nibbana, is it?
No. At
Not yet.
At each of the stages.
Sotapanna, you already achieve
Yes.
Nibbana.
One has experienced nibbana fruit. Okay. There are 2 types of chittas that experience nibbana: path chittas and fruit chittas. So when a being experiences the sotapanna path chitta, which is experiencing Nibbana, then they are technically a Sotapanna after that. And at any time, they can go and choose to experience Nibbana again and again using the Sotapanna fruit citta. So they're already experiencing many times Nibbana. Then the same thing repeats again for Sakadagami, Anagami, and Arahat. All right. The difference is what is left over, and the Arahat, they've done all that needs to be done. There's nothing left over.
Thank you, Brother Rob.
Okay.
Brother Rob, sorry, Chris here.
Yeah, Chris.
Brother Chris. So can I say at the point of death, for a Anagami, his or her last thoughts is still not to leave the world, because there's despite him very close to letting go of everything, but for an Arahant, he is ready to leave the world. Is that a right statement?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Brother Rob, one last question. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think there's a typo. There's a miss of a typo there. I mean this Ambosen, right, marriage with 14. I think you miss out the worry. It's not inside there, which will be eliminated under the Anagami stage.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right.
Total should be 14 if I'm not wrong.
Yeah,
14.
you're right. Okay.
Right. You miss out the worry, is it? Yeah.
Yes. Okay, any other questions? Okay, then we will continue on with the Sangha Jewel in the next talk in a couple of weeks. So somebody can read the reflections.
Yes, the reflection.